a few weeks ago as the Kala Chakra is this kind of radical positivity, but not positivity in the sense of outright positive mind, but it's the positivity of experiencing all that comes into our field of experience and fields of sensation as being ultimately of goodness. So if I'm having a real, deep sorrow right now, or feeling great despair right now, I'm not contextualizing that as a negative, nor am I contextualizing it as an obstacle. I'm contextualizing it as essentially, in its essence, it's a neutral. Although it may be very uncomfortable, and I may not wish it to be there, and I may not wish it for anyone else to experience something like that. But the energy of it is profound, and it becomes either a negative or a positive depending on how the experience of that despair or melancholy or anxiousness, how it actually ends up affecting me in a ultimately, what is it? Is it a net positive or a net negative? And so if I can come in and then I go and I put my gaze into my third eye and I open my heart and I put some beautiful music on perhaps, or I'm just outside and listening to the birds sing or the breeze blow, or I don't have any of that and I'm in my room by myself and maybe outside my door my relatives are arguing and upset. It could be anything. But I have this ability to actually optimize my inner life force environment so that even the despair ends up acting as a fuel for greater devotion and greater love and greater sweetness. And it acts as, or even anxiety acts as a type of fuel or a type of motivation to experience something more blissful. Whereas that type of same anxiety could create more anxiety, and in what we would call like ordinary circumstances, it will, because in ordinary circumstances, like attracts like. So if I have a momentum of anxiousness, then therefore that means there is a condition that is causing anxiousness to emerge. And as long as that condition remains the same, it will tend to produce the same results. But then if I can actually have the tools to shift my energy system, I don't have to push that anxiousness away. I don't have to even wish that it wasn't there, even though I may wish it wasn't there. But I don't have to feel like it needs to go away. In fact, I can utilize it, and I can really feel deeply into it, and I can really feel the depths of my feeling. And therefore, out of that, I can, a feeling of compassion for my own experience can emerge. And with that in combination, and that's what we mean by developing pranic strength and mental vitality, because that gives us the capacity to not be dominated by the difficulty of life, the difficult emotions of life. Because if we really inspect it, we'll find that it's the emotional energy that's so important. And whether we're experiencing the emotional energy that causes us to be more compassionate, more loving, more joyful, and with more equanimity, or are we experiencing the emotions that are causing us to be more spiteful, more jealous, and more envious, and with less equanimity? And that's what this 40-day journey is actually about. And we're utilizing the practices, and we're utilizing this meditation as it's like a type of alchemy, essentially, because there's the energy that is air, or we could call it wind, and space. And those energies tend to produce, when they're in their ordinary circumstances, ordinary kind of expression, and then our life becomes stressful, they will tend to produce the worrisome emotions, anxiety, fear, doubts, etc. When things are going just fine and we're in our ordinary expression of life, those energies are not necessarily problematic. But when we are under greater amounts of stress, they become what we call in Ayurveda a dosha. They become that which disrupts the normal equanimity of the organism, of the mind-body organism. And so if we can make sure that our life force is circulating in a fashion that then causes the mind to become more intuitive and the heart to become more compassionate, then under stress, that same wind element can express itself. We may still feel the waves of worry, or another word at this point where we get a more heightened expression. We may feel the energy of instability, uncertainty, and that will give us concern. And concern is a different experience than anxiety. And so if we have wise concern, that then we can respond in an intelligent fashion versus in an emotionally reactive fashion. But even if we find ourselves in great anxiety, then we can utilize that. But that's why we put so much emphasis on consistency of practice, and why several times per year in the Life Force Academy we do a 40-day challenge, because it's stabilizing the consistency of practice. And therefore, we're not waiting to where when things are difficult, then we'll go do meditation, and then we'll do yoga practice. We're consistently taking care of our life force system so that we're consistently increasing the enjoyment of life, the deep love of life, and the deep sense of purpose of life. We're continuing to cultivate the depth of our experience of those things. And then also and that's happening because the inner environment and the mental, emotional intelligence and vitality is getting greater and stronger, because the depth of our love is getting greater and stronger, the depth of our compassion is getting greater and stronger, and the depth of our joy is getting greater and stronger, little by little. But it won't always feel that way. And this is very important, and this is something I wanted to discuss with everyone on the first day of a 40-day journey. Is the journey, it goes, the old saying is, we all know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not a bad saying, because that is somewhat of the experience, where we wish it to just be like this, and that's how it goes. But the reality is it goes, and you feel great, and then it goes, you know what I mean? And then it goes up a little, and you're like, all right, great, everything's wonderful, and go, and then I was doing so good. I was doing all this yoga, and I was eating organic, and still my life is terrible. And then that's that mood, and then go, and then go. That's sometimes how it is, but really it's like. Now every different person will have slightly different sound effects depending on your style. So you're gonna go, and then like that. And so when you're up here though, and again, this is a model, and it's not based on reality, but it's one way of contextualizing and understanding the journey. It doesn't mean that it's actually an incline like that, but it is one way of understanding it, like if you were hiking a mountain pass. And if you're hiking a mountain pass, you want to know, like, what is the terrain going to be like? Once you get to this altitude, are you going to need, warmer clothes? Might there be storms that come along your journey, and therefore you need to bring some gear and you need to understand how to build a little shelter, temporary shelter, in order to protect yourself as a storm comes through. Potentially storms will come through, but when you're on that dip, that's way up here, sometimes it feels to us personally and emotionally like it's down here, like at a starting point, or even below a starting point at some times. Because when we start to work with like yogic practices and kundalini yoga practices, and if for those of you new to kundalini yoga, that word is a big word. And you may hear that phrase kundalini yoga mean different things and to different people depending on the context in which it's used. But this system of practice in which we're doing, which is really designed to strengthen the nervous system, to balance the endocrine system, and to optimize the pranic environment at a pace that is tolerable by your organism in a healthy fashion. So it is powerful, it does move relatively quickly, but it also moves slowly, because we don't want it to move too quickly, because we want change that happens in our lives to be something that is more sustainable, and not something where like the lid gets blown off the top and like and the life turns upside down. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in gradual progress. But within that being said, when you start to really purify the channels and the subconscious mind, and there can be the sensation initially that things are more turbulent, because it's not that it's creating problems that weren't there, it's just that it's bringing things to the surface that were kind of dormant within the subconscious mind. And it's expanding the field of our awareness so that now we're able to see some of the things that we weren't previously able to see, but have always been there. And not only have they been there under the surface, but they've been essentially dominating our habitual tendencies without, unbeknownst to us. That's why it's called the subconscious. So you see what I mean? It doesn't always mean that as we do meditation practice, no matter what the system is, that things that I'm just going to feel better and better and better and better. I will actually ultimately, my experience over 20 years of doing kundalini yoga practices and meditations consistently, don't know if I've even missed a day. If I look back over the long term, it is exactly that. It's better and better and better and better, meaning I'm more content, I'm happier, I'm more kind, I'm more loving. However, if I were to look at in a smaller window, like a 40-day, it's not like necessarily better and better and better and better. It can be like great, 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 and you hear how those sound effects are like, you know, it can feel like that. So that's why when I was saying earlier, when even in our disposition when we're practicing, not being overly enthusiastic. I only say that because enthusiasm is wonderful. We all love to feel enthusiasm, but enthusiasm with a sense of, really, this is about something much bigger. And the bigness of it is beyond even any of our comprehension, including myself. And our endeavor in this journey is boundless compassion. And that means we're maintaining connectivity to not only our own suffering, but to the suffering of others. And that we start even a practice when we go Om Namo Gurudev Namo Adi Gude Namah Jugad Gude Namah. We begin with the disposition that may whatever goodness comes out of this, may I dedicate that to beings, to sentient feeling beings, and may my life be in service. Because I have the awareness that my liberation is intertwined with the liberation of all others. My happiness is intertwined with the happiness of all others. And so the type of joy that we will begin to experience and that will continue to swell for those of us who are experiencing some happiness is one that emerges and arises out of the experience of a deeper reality, not because now I'm feeling great all of a sudden, versus I'm feeling, not when you feel great, you feel happy, you know? But if we grip onto it because we mistake that as something substantive, then when that goo comes, that goo is going to be a lot more energetic. That drop is going to be a lot more difficult to deal with if when it was on the upswing, I was so emotionally enraptured by it, and I was telling all my friends how great it is, and I was like, poof. And if we do that, that's no big deal. It's not like you messed up, because we can understand this, but you have to go through it. You know, we're going to emotionally grip to pleasures continually until one day we don't. But the extent to which we emotionally grip to the highs will be modulated over time as the life force begins to concentrate more deeply into the central channel of the organism. And therefore, out of that, the mind will gain, and the emotions will gain greater and greater equanimity. And so I just wanted to set a little bit of that context as we're starting, you know, we're kind of at the trailhead right now. And then we're going on a 40-day journey together. And then at some point, and usually the beginning is always fun, everybody's excited, we're at the trailhead. Ooh, what do you bring in your, you know, what do you bring for lunch? Ooh, cool. Ooh, I love your shoes. All that type of stuff. And then you get up and and you're starting to hike. And at a certain point, the funness of the new experience and the new journey will fade away. Police sirens may be heard in the background, and you'll feel like danger. And there'll be resistance. And it'll be like, I don't like this. I'm not into this. It could be with that exactly. It could be totally something else. But when the subconscious starts to react, it's often, yes, like,
really? Come on.
gone. And so it's good to just pay attention and to know that this thing is of deep work. It will really ask you to dig deeply. It'll ask you to have some, to develop and to utilize some real deep spiritual fortitude and courage. And that's why I do recommend, as much as possible, if you can attend these live broadcasts on Wednesday mornings or their replay, do that, because we'll be doing things like this, where we're reminding ourselves, oh yes, and we'll come together as a community. We can feel each other's presence. And also on Mondays and Thursdays, and also Simrit sessions on Tuesdays. Obviously, you don't need to do everything, but that's all available to you. And if you can get in 1 or 2 or even 3 good yoga classes each week, in addition to doing your daily meditation, that'll be really helpful, because it'll keep, first of all, the life force well circulated, keep the mind clear, all that good stuff, endocrine system balanced, nervous system strengthened, etc., etc. But what it'll also do is keep our mind connected to the bigger reasons why we're doing this in the first place. And so then that gives us greater spiritual fortitude. So there will be times where our energy is going to be low and we're going to struggle more. And it's going to really have nothing to do with how we're doing or not doing, but it could be that the astrology is difficult, or it could be anything, just something we're not aware of. So when the dips come, we also don't grip onto that emotionally, and I encourage you not even to analyze it too much. It's interesting to kind of like consider, why am I feeling this way? But not being too overly concerned, because that also, just like the ups are temporary, therefore illusory, the downs are temporary, therefore illusory. And so that's what we mean by creating kind of a gear for our trek, and making sure we brought, it doesn't mean we're not gonna be able to keep the storm away necessarily, but at least we'll have good gear so that we're able to keep trekking even when the storm's coming. And that's these deeper dispositions and these kind of this path is worn. It's been walked, gazillions of times by all of us, not even other beings, all of us, through lifetimes and lifetimes. We've been here before. And so that's all, you know. And so when we starting our challenge today and doing a meditation and doing our aura charge in just a moment, and then going into the Longe Gongkar, you have the 3 levels, the 3 tiers on the 40-day challenge page. And the first tier is radiance, and then prosperity, and then warrior. So if you're brand new to this stuff, stick with the radiance tier, and that's going to be, you're going to be doing this meditation 11 minutes a day. We also have this great little warm-up exercise series, similar to the exercises we just did in this class. And I don't know if we have that on the 40-day challenge page, but we'll put it there today.